Ladies and gentlemen, I forgot my coat. Oh my god. I'm unprepared. I'm unequipped. Ah! Oh my god, and my coat's right here. My coat's right here. Jesus Christ. We are back with Season 1, Episode 5. All eyes on me. If you did not expect this, President Clamp, then I have done my job wrong. This has been scheduled for literal months at this point. Changing water filters. I was unarmored. No wonder they got me. So the hands were defaulted to Rebecca, which makes sense, who granted them to David, who doesn't want them because they're techie hands. Okay, he's stupid. Moving on. We see Kiwi is over there literally bathing in ice, which makes sense. This actually is something that's a nice little bit of background lore. She's bathing in ice because, you notice the ice is partially melted, because when she's running full tilt with the kind of full body net gear that she's got going, she is generating a ridiculous amount of heat. So she literally has to have a bathtub full of ice. That's what that boils down to. Yeah, Netrunners burn a lot of heat, and also literally burn if they're not taking care of themselves. Really, Loner? Interesting. I don't think I knew that. Yeah, there was loose ice in Lucy's apartment, too, as there should be. Again, any kind of major network. That was in the game, too, if you're remembering. So there's a bit of a character moment as Maine, kind of pokes at him like, haha, you finally got laid, you and Lucy are together, that's cool, yada, yada, yada. But then finally Kiwi gets up and wanders over, completely naked, I feel like pointing out. And there's a weird little tidbit where they're talking, and I find myself thinking, I wonder if she could have actually yeah, she didn't have her code either. I wonder if she could find something if they'd given her more time to look into it, instead of relying on this vague hint that David gave. Significance? Well, this feels like a domino, you know what I mean? We're only at one step into the domino right now, but this is already kind of damaging, right? Get blue dimples, which apparently shoots spider silk. I looked that up. But I love the tidbit where obviously she has no shame and probably doesn't even think of her body in that sense. But David actually says, you two ever hear of a thing called privacy? While Kiwi is sitting next to him completely naked. Anyways, we find a little bit more about Braindances and how they operate. They kind of glance over a lot of exactly how horrific Braindances actually are. The virtual thing, that's different. And again, I couldn't find a proper term for it. I know it's technically a brain dance. But generally speaking, when one of these things says brain dance, they mean you've scanned someone's real-life experiences with a very advanced chip, and then you experience what they experienced, right? So, okay. So, yeah, naturally, Corpo executives are into some really weird crap. Custom-tailored stuff. Removing pain limiters. And they do a very quick and dirty here, so much so that I bet some people who weren't paying that much attention to this would miss just how horrifically horrible brain dances actually are, especially as a practice, because it's a common thing. In fact, and sometimes they will specifically go out to murder people or scan people or do other horrible things to people to scan them and then sell it, right? I think you're right. Virtue environment. That sounds right, Dante Bronson. Yeah, I also noticed the military thing. We'll come back to that in just a second. Yeah, brain dances can make you a cyberpsycho because you are, in electrical impulse sense, you are experiencing all the things they're experiencing, and that is exactly as unpleasant as it sounds, as David makes clear in this very episode. So they approach Mr. JK here. They're like, hey, what's up? And he's like, hey, what's up? And then, unfortunately, he literally has eyes in the back of his head. Gross, by the way. And so he sets off an EMP. A really mean EMP that specifically is hitting a frequency that hits neural implants, which is why Kiwi throws up on the spot. Just, ooh. No, I remember that, Black File. Yeah. Naturally, Maine is completely knocked out immediately. David is only partially knocked out. What's her face? Devo? Studio? Maine's girlfriend is barely adjusted by this, but still just and then recovers. Dorio, thank you. I know it started with a D. And then we find out he's actually after David, or maybe that's an improv. Either way, he takes David, and then David wakes up experiencing what is extremely obviously a brain dance. Really, really gory brain dance. No, Evo, not at all. I'm not sure how far we'll go today, but we're gonna go. There's a very, very nice detail, very briefly. I haven't spoken very positively about the artwork and the animation of the show, but I want to give credit where credit is due. There's a shot where he walks out. He walks out from the underworld, under the city where there's all the corpses. He goes out and he's at the ground level. Immediately above him, literally vertically in the shot, is all the cops. Above them is the Max Tech, the hovercraft, whatever they're actually called. Immediately above them is the giant corpo buildings, giant towering things, and above all of that, just barely visible over the top of the screen, is that stupid holographic fish. And boy, if that isn't Night City in one shot, right there. The tiering and the layers, all the way down to the ground, him and the normal people on the floor, all the way up the layers to the people who are at the very, very, very top, which is Arasaka, right? That's actually really cool. It's a very good shot, and I wanted to give credit and praise to it. I noticed that too, Loner, and you're probably right. He mentions he edits his BD, so this is probably a custom edit. Very, very gory, very messed up. Blah, 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 blah. We get to the part where we find out a little bit of a detail, which I feel like I already knew, that all high-end military hardware always has a BD scroller. In other words, the high-end military gear is always scanning the brain, just as a built-in feature. Which, among several... Yeah, it totally affects David. Among several other things, says a lot about how the setting works, but it also means that David's being scanned constantly. No, I did. You're right, Dante Bronson, because, yeah, that's an impressive feat, since Gotham is Gotham. Hi, Evo. So, this is when the background lore and the background element of cyberpsychosis stops being a background element and gets shoved right up to the foreground. At this point, a character literally turns to the main character and says, "You're going to get cyberpsychosis." And I'm just like, okay. I get why they do these kind of overt things. I'm not going to ding it too much for that. But, like, this is what the whole show has been showcasing this entire time. It's even been doing it subtly and quietly in ways that make sense. This whole time, David has been interested in Chrome. He's been interested in teching up. He's already gotten 2 implants that we know of. Obviously, the spine and the lungs. And he's already interested... No, Cashel. He doesn't have enough money. He's already interested in the big old gauntlets, the cannon gauntlets, right? So... Yeah, but no, it's okay. It's okay. David's built different. He knows he can handle this. I'm just going to take the drug one time. I'm not going to get addicted. It's fine. Yeah, the doc already told him straight up. Just right up front. Yeah, the gorillas, that's what they're called, sorry. He's special. JK is actually very funny. He's voiced by David Thornton, who you've heard from everything. Seriously, he's one of those actors. If I told you his list of characters, you probably wouldn't recognize most of them. But you have heard his voice before because he's in everything. Probably the most recognizable voice for me is he plays Cyx over in the Kingdom Hearts series. But he plays a lot of things. In games, in animes, and in shows. Western animation predominantly. So lots and lots of stuff. And he does a really, really good job of JK here. He also has a really good line. All Chrome Fiends hold on to their sanity until they don't. And I wrote down the quote. Where is it? There it is. You either lose yourself forever or you die, and there's no in between. And that's the line he gives, and it's just kind of, yeah. No, yeah. There's an English dub. I didn't know there was a Japanese dub. I'm not sure how to activate that because I'm just watching on Netflix right over here. Maybe here? Nope, that's the playback speed. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I can change audio. Apparently, it's in English, French, Japanese, Spanish, Latin American, German, and Japanese audio description, as well as Czech, Hungarian, Indonesian, Italian, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, Thai, and Vietnamese. Anyways. But I like J.K. here. I do. Other than the fact that I like his actor. He's rather weirdly amusing this whole time. You're not going to kill me because I'm still alive. And of course, he's got some backup wyverns, so he's fine. He's also very, 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 very chromed. Like, a lot. He literally has eyes on the back of his head, for God's sakes, and an EMP generator, which he himself is obviously grounded from. So we have a fight where the Dodger and the Solo are trying to distract the Wyverns long enough for the Netrunner to do her job. Yeah, it sounds about right to a bunch of jobs I've done here. Either way, we learn a little bit about the military hardware here. By the way, I swear, if that's not just bringing the actor back, that's actually a clip from the game, because that was Delamain, and don't think I didn't notice that. I know that sounds like a really, really weird thing to bring up, but Delamain was actually one of my favorite characters in the game, no joke. Not like the favorite, not at the top slot, but if you asked me to list my 5 favorite characters in Cyberpunk 2077, Delamain would probably be in that list somewhere. Anyways, so they surround Tanaka. We got you surrounded. So this is pretty much exactly when I look at this and I say, yeah, they're in over their heads. In fact, honestly, JK probably was in over their heads. He is absolutely... this is a boss. This is a boss battle right here. We only see it for a brief bit. We do see, he's got the hand missiles and the needles, which is just horrifying. He's got the fast attack thing. Main's gun sees up again, by the way. Don't think I didn't see that. And yeah, David actually ends up saving Main, and Main ends up giving what I can only refer to as the killing blow. But he goes full tilt into Tanaka's face, just like as absolutely hard as he possibly can. And that red dent says all it probably needs to. And then we watch JK drown to death in his own blood. Yeah, in all honesty, I agree. JK would have ended them all if not for Lucy. And then Tanaka, they got lucky, to be quite frank. And even then, they still lost something. Yeah, it's okay. He's got premium trauma team. I want to talk about that very briefly, because you notice we're already at the end of the episode. We're just racing through this. I'm not meaning to, I swear. There's just not a lot to talk about other than just repeating the events. But I wanted to talk about Trauma Team. Trauma Team is fascinating. Now, how much you buy into this is up to you. Obviously, I've GM'd Cyberpunk several times, so I've bought into this completely because I like the idea. The idea here is that Trauma Team is so high tier that it's actually kind of above and beyond everything else. These people just fought a very high tier chromed person and a executive boss, a corpo, who was fully teched out. And they very nearly died against him. But they're still all afraid of dealing with Trauma Team. And that's important. Trauma Team is way up there in terms of tiering. They have the best hardware, the best software. They have the best cyberware. They've got the best commitment. These people, Trauma Team is what you think of when you think high tier military. These guys, you see, I've always argued that Trauma Team's a step above Max Tac, but that is pure personal opinion. Because I don't know. I guess just because I like the idea more, for lack of a better way to put it. But for all intents and purposes, Trauma Team and Max Tac are on the same tier, relatively speaking. They're both up there above everything else. These guys have hover cars. These guys have the ability to respond to operations within seconds. These guys have the ability to walk in and absolutely run over things that are way above everyone else's pay grade. In that sense, they are pretty much side by side. The only difference is Trauma Team is here to, get you out and save your life, and you pay through the nose for that. Max Tac is here to kill you. And that's another reason the two kind of dovetail into each other rather nicely, too. It's something that I mentioned at the very beginning of the 2077 run, is that we see Trauma Team pretty early on, thanks to a kind of a coincidence as one of the jobs in 2077. And the best part is, everything about the game makes it very clear just how terrifying one Trauma Team car coming up and dealing with the target is. I've done that too, Dante Bronson, absolutely. I've actually had some players buy platinum coverage for one mission. And I just kind of abstract over that, right? Like, technically in lore, they buy coverage for a certain period of time. And I just say, you get it for the next mission. If something goes bad, they'll swoop in and we'll do some dice rolls and we'll see exactly how this works out, right? Trauma Team's a great tool from a GM and from a player perspective because they can be just as much allies as enemies. They absolutely have the ability to be a what do you call that? An advancing wall. If for whatever reason you are against Trauma Team, the only real option there is to run and try to get away from that advancing wall as fast as you can. I've done an encounter like that where my players were like, "Okay, we've got the attention of Trauma Team," and one of my players was an expert Cyberpunk person, someone who actually had played more than me, and so her response was, "Yeah, we're running immediately." And the other players were like, "What? No, we got to fight the encounter." And I actually gave like an audible reaction of, like I didn't mean to, because I usually just sit and let my players talk amongst each other. But I couldn't help but react to the idea of the players fighting Trauma Team. And they look at me, and then they look at her, and they're like, "Okay, we run." We run. Just immediately. It was a fun session. But anyways. Ugh. Can you win an encounter with a Trauma Team? Anyways. Like, I'm not saying no, but you have to understand something about Cyberpunk's combat rules. One bad dice roll will kill you pretty much no matter how good you are. And that's actually something I like about Cyberpunk. It's a little bit different than D&D, right? D&D, ironically, is a little bit more video gamey than Cyberpunk. Because if someone, you know, attacks you with like a super ultra axe slice to the face while you're asleep, there's a chance you'll survive through that because you just have that much HP. In Cyberpunk, one bad shot to the skull and you're dead. We actually just saw this in this show. That happened to Pilar. Remember that? Pilar was not exactly low tier, and he wasn't exactly unadvanced, and he wasn't exactly underchromed. One shot was all it took. Now, granted, that's not quite the same, but you get the idea. So, can you take on Trauma Team? Yeah. Odds are against you a little bit. Yeah, Pilar was, I mean, kind of called that on himself, to be honest with you. I actually wonder how much neural gear he had. Because, as mentioned earlier, we kind of see a little bit of how some of the crew leans into neural gear and not. Like, obviously, Kiwi is just drowning in neural gear. But, anyways. Rating. So, there are several things that this episode does rather right, I would say. Let me scroll this out here. Obviously, we've pushed forward the narrative. We've actually finally started what I would call Chapter 1. Like, we've done our establishment, we've established the section, we've established the characters, we've done a prologue section. I will agree with something Loner mentioned earlier. The dialogue has noticeably gotten better, which is good because the dialogue has been dragging the whole show down up to this point in time. Type !Streaminations. It'll get you a link to it. Bionic Punk. Oh, speaking of which, Von Falkenstein, if you hear this, it's MLP, not MPL. That spreadsheet is still there. I just haven't touched it in a while. I feel like we finally dripped into orange. I think I agree with the crowd. I think we have finally got enough quality on display, and we fixed some of the issues that we finally are in low orange, but orange nonetheless. I think we have started to see the show really start to take off a little bit. So let's go ahead and jot that down here. Get this here. What's our next episode? Season 1, Episode 6, Girl on Fire. I'm just going to jump right into this because I kind of want to see where this is going. I'm not saying we're going to finish this show today. Really, I'm not. But let's see where we go, shall we? See you in a bit.